Reading now from Paul's letter to the Philippian church, chapter 2, verses 12 through 16. And this passage is loosely titled, Shining as Lights in the World. So then, dear friends, as you always obeyed me when I was with you, it is even more important that you obey me now while I'm away from you. Keep on working with fear and trembling to complete your salvation, because God is always at work in you to make you willing and able to obey His own purpose. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may be innocent and pure as God's perfect children, who live in a world of corrupt and sinful people. You must shine among them like stars lighting up the sky as you offer them the message of life. If you do so, I shall have reason to be proud of you on the day of Christ, because it will show that all my effort and all my work have not been wasted. In 1859, Charles Dickens published his book, A Tale of Two Cities. The book depicts how severely the French aristocracy abused the poor and the powerless peasantry in the years leading up to the French Revolution. And correspondingly, how brutally the peasants treated their former aristocrats once the revolution was set in motion. Dickens drops his reader into the thick of it all, and at the time draws parallels with life in London, England during the same period. In the prologue to his book, Dickens writes, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything going for us, we had nothing going for us. We were all going directly to heaven. We were all going directly the other way." These are timeless words. There isn't a generation that hasn't echoed in some fashion these words of Dickens. Now, it is true that many people, because of circumstance, or choices made, or simply because of the beauty and the giftedness of life, experience and know the age of wisdom, the season of light, the spring of hope. And they seem to have everything going for them. But it's also true that there are so many, too many, in fact, who, because of different circumstances or different choices, or simply because of the tragedy and the ugliness of life, experience and know something quite different. They know the age of foolishness, the season of darkness, the winter of despair. And they seem to have nothing going for them. It was to such a world as this, our beautiful and together troubled world, that God sent Jesus, that somehow by his love, the season of darkness that so many experienced might be transformed into a season of light. And that's just what Jesus did. In love, he lifted up those who had fallen. He liberated those who were prisoners to so many things. He forgave those who were bent under sin's weight. He restored hope to the despairing and joy to those whose hearts were broken, shattered. But I can't help but think that Jesus didn't just lift and liberate and forgive and restore. He called people because of his love to do the same for others. Not so much to pay him back, but to pay it forward by being for others all that he had been for them. Love one another, Jesus said. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. It is by your loving others, Jesus said, that you demonstrate that you are mine. In the passage of Scripture I read just a few moments ago, Paul encourages his friends to work out their salvation and reminded them that it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. I say it is God's work of Christmas that we do when we love one another. It is God's good purpose that we fulfill. Paul then urged his friends to live in such a way that they shine as stars in the universe as they hold out the word of life. Shine as stars in the universe. Leslie Brandt paraphrased these words in quite a particularly beautiful way. She writes, "Now as God's redeemed and restored children, we are commissioned and assigned to brighten up this dark world like stars that brighten up the night. And like those stars that reflect the sun's glory after the darkness has fallen, we are to spell out the promise of the coming dawn." Isn't that beautiful? And Paul speaks these words to all who would dare to carry Christ's name, to call themselves Christians. He writes to Christians of every time and every place, to you, to me, to all of us, saying that it is by our living and our loving, as if we were stars that brighten up the sky after the darkness has fallen, that we spell out to others the promise of the coming dawn. And why? Because it's those things done in the name of love that have the power to transform the world, one person at a time. Last week I spoke of simple ways that we can bring love and light to those who are living in their seasons of darkness. As an example, I don't know if you remember, I cited Captain Shaw of the Salvation Army, who risked his own safety to have 3 leper prisoners unchained by their guards in order to ease their suffering. But today I want to talk about the larger ways, even more difficult and challenging ways that others have taken to transform seasons of darkness into seasons of light. Now, all of us know, I'm sure, of the great love that a little nun named Mother Teresa gave. But do you know of the great love and determination that Sister Cabrini displayed? 100-odd years ago, there was a girl who was the youngest of 13 children, born to a poor family in northern Italy. And her parents died when she was 2. At the age of 8, she announced, "I'm going to be a missionary to China when I grow up." Her brothers and sisters laughed at her. "You cannot be a missionary," they said. "The church only uses men, not women. Besides, you're too sickly." But the little girl was determined. And when she finished her formal education, which qualified her to be a teacher in any Catholic order, the Roman Catholic Church refused to take her. "You're too weak," they said. And she was. She didn't even weigh 100 pounds. And she spit up blood all the time. But her strong will overcompensated her weak body. "I'll take my case to the Pope," she declared. And she did. Sister Cabrini, the Pope's voice was firm as he looked at this frail but determined nun. "The church does not send women to be missionaries in China or any other place." "Then, Holy Father," she responded, "I shall start an order for women only." "Agreed," said the Pope, "providing you go as a missionary to the Italians in New York City." And Sister Frances Cabrini accepted the compromise. For months, she waited on Ellis Island, spitting up blood. Finally, frustrated with the senseless delay, she appealed to the hierarchy of the church in New York City. "Frankly, sister," she was told, "you're too sickly. Now go home." Righteously indignant, she stamped her foot and rebuked the archbishop. "Sir, I will not go home. I am at home right here, right now." And with that, the archbishop gave in and let her stay. There were few who knew as well as she what New York City was really like at the beginning of the 20th century. The greatest influx of immigrants came in those years. Poor and homeless immigrants wandered, lonely, unwanted, unloved, and lost in a new land. To them came this angel of mercy, this angel from God. And by 1916, this sickly woman, whom the church thought could never be up to the task anywhere, through her beautiful love for God and her loving heart for others, founded over 60 orphanages for children and hospitals for the sick and the dying. 60. That incredible story says much to us all, doesn't it? It says a great deal, not just about dreams that we might have for our own lives, but of the reality that not all our dreams come true. A little girl dreamed about becoming a missionary to China. It didn't happen. But did she give up on the dream? No. Did she settle for a lesser life? No. She reworked her dream. She dreamed a new dream. She went to New York. It says a great deal about persistence in doing the loving things, doesn't it? Her family thought she was foolish. Her church thought she was weak. The Pope initially said no. The Archbishop dragged his feet. Still, even with her poor health and with apparently little support, she founded over 60 orphanages. 60 orphanages for children and hospitals for the sick and dying. Wow. Does that not say something about rising above discouragement? To do what was for her the right thing. The lovingly responsive thing. If the first choice of her life wasn't possible, the second choice or the third choice would do. And when it came to brightening up this dark world like a star that brightened up the night, when it came to reflecting the sun's glory after the darkness had fallen to spell out the promise of the coming dawn, it wasn't the where that was important. It was the doing of it, whatever it was, that mattered. It can't be done, she was told. But it was done. Someone once wrote, "I cannot do everything. Still, I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." Right? It's often said that Christ is present in the tears of the broken, in the pain of the suffering, in the aching of those who are struggling. It is often said that Christ is present in those who are wounded. Well, if that is true, then it is equally true that when we minister to those who are wounded, we are ministering to the Lord Himself. It is equally true that Christ is present in us as we, by our loving, bind up the wounds of others. And so I say, be persistent in your love. Be bold with it. Expend your love for a great purpose whenever you can. And wherever you can. And though you cannot do everything, never refuse to do the something that you can do. And who knows? By your Christ-likeness, someone's season of darkness might very well be transformed into a season of light. And when that happens, 2 lives are going to be changed. The life of the one you helped, and I suggest your own. And you will revel in the fact that you traveled further still into the very heart of God. And you became an even greater disciple of Jesus Christ. You will have become more compassionate, more loving, and more giving. And the world, because of what you did, will have become a bit more beautiful than tragic.